And I really want to make sure that we thank all of our sponsors. So especially our gold platinum research one was University of South Florida, Fugro, Wolpert, Dewberry. We've had a lot of support for this meeting. We very appreciate it. We appreciate all of you guys taking the time. I know everybody's busy, so we're really happy that everybody's here. So just a few logistics. This meeting will be recorded, so if you don't want to be part of that, obviously try not to ask questions, and people online, you have access to chat, raising hands and such. If you don't want to be a part of it, just recorded, just be aware of that. And so, as I just said, virtual people will be able to, make sure your microphones are muted, cameras on. Only if you're presenting. Presenters online will be able to share their screen, so they'll be able to share their presentations. And when we really this room is really makes it user friendly for the online people. So we really want you to be a part of this. So as I said, Amber will be monitoring for any raised hands, and you'll just unmute yourself when you want to. In person, because the room is so well equipped for remote work, presenting and participating. With microphones, I don't know, some of you were here for the COMET annual review, so I know Cheryl drove this into your head or tried to. They are extremely sensitive, and if you're whispering to the person next to you, people on Teams will be able to hear it. So keep that in mind. During breaks and lunch, we will mute it, so it won't be, but also again, they're going to be kind of sensitive to what's going on in here. In person, all of the snacks, lunch, anything for the next couple of days will be outside. I'm sure you've found some of that. The bathrooms on this floor, right out this door, and there is a little water bottle filler drinking fountain out there. One of those bathrooms said it was out of order earlier, but it's not now. So there are two of them. But if you don't want to wait, there are down the steps to the left. There's another few bathrooms down there. And Wi-Fi, you just have to connect to the USF guest, open the browser. If you have trouble, there's a poster on the back wall. There's another one up here if you need some guidance to get through it. Just real quick, kind of the key topics of today. I did put one agenda on each table. Thank you again, Cheryl. If you want to take a look or whatever, but our first part of that is going to be the LiDAR data updates for the FCMaP or FSMI data collection. We'll have a break around 2:20. Then we'll have the sonar data collection updates. We will be wrapping up around 4:15. And for those of you who were registered or wanted to go to the hub, we will have the mixer from 4:30 to 6:30 at the address, but it's walkable. If you need to park, there is parking, but it's across the street from the entrance to the hub. And just very quickly, if the people online will introduce themselves, you can put it in chat, just your name and affiliation, and I will have everybody go around the room. Again, we don't need microphones in here because it's so sensitive, so I'll just have everybody go around, and just your name and affiliation would be great. Yeah. Cheryl, do you want to start?
Yeah, Cheryl Hapke, USF and FCMaP.
Hey, Renee Baumstark. I'm with Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission here at the Fish and Wildlife Research Institute.
Nicole Reno, Florida Institute of Oceanography.
And how are you?
Richard Goosen, Fugro.
Heather Geyer, Fugro.
Carol Gilbert, USF Comet.
Mike Hannon, Sail Drone.
Sarah Doran, USGS. Aaron Hart, Wolford.
Jeff Lovin, Wolpert.
Rick Householder, Wolf. Jay Kozik, Wolpert.
Jade Lee with FWC and FWRI.
Christina Malika, also with FWC and FWRI.
Scott Haydell, R2 Sonics.
Dave Cohan, FWC and FWRI.
Nick Alcaraz, Florida Fish and Wildlife.
Rick, USGS.
Priscilla Levy, Secor.
Russ Jones, owner of the Fellows.
Jim Flux, USGS.
Patrick Bryce, Aptum.
Julia Moore, Aptum.
Rebecca Ziegler, UCSD.
Heidi Brockhouse, Florida Flood Hub.
Lacey Lingelbach, Florida Flood Hub.
Jason Brundage, NOAA.
Carlin Scott, University of South Florida.
Al Carlin, Dewberry.
Cliff Dewberry.
Stephanie Padilla, Dewberry.
And again, Amber Butler, that's Noah. I also, Cheryl, did you remember your cards or did I give you too many things to do? Oh, cool. So, to respect everybody's time, we are going to do the 20-minute presentation and then have 5 minutes of question for the presentation. Please respect everybody's time. And Cheryl, we have little cards. She will be flagging you down and don't make her tackle you.
I'm small, but
Yeah,
she's deadly.
So I have a 2 and a 5 and a stop. So maybe I'll just do the 2-minute warning and then a stop.
cool.
And I'll be sitting visual place over there.
If you want to pull it, I told you you didn't need to be up here and now I'm realizing maybe you do. It's so cute. If you could just wander up here and
I can
play.
sit there.
Actually, they should be able to see you from here. So,
Oh, yeah, I'll stand.
Okay.
Yeah.
sorry, logistics, we didn't work out. And with that, I will have Cheryl Apke come up here and start out the presentations. Thank you.
This is our 8th one. This is amazing. So welcome everybody to the summit. Just wanted to give a brief overview of updates and accomplishments that we've had over the past couple of years. A lot's been going on. I'm going to step over and say, when we have these events, because our sponsors are so generous, we have catering, we have rooms we set up for the number of people. Please, in the future, register by the date that you're supposed to register, because we had to do really a last minute shift in terms of catering because so many people registered very last minute. So I'm being the bad cop here. I'm just letting you guys know that it caused a little bit of a headache. So we would greatly appreciate it if you pay attention to deadlines in the future. Okay. I'm done chastising the group. So we all know what FCMaP is. I'm Cheryl Apke. I'm the chair of the FCMaP Science and Technology Advisory Council. Renee's a co-chair. He's just the state rep co-chair. And we have Meredith Westington is the federal co-chair. And a number of other people who are members of the STAC are in the room here. We always have this wheel of benefits, but I just still think it really is the message that speaks the loudest. And actually during the COMIT review meeting, NOAA Rear Admiral Ben Evans and I were having a lot of discussion around this, and both of us now less than him, or Florida now less than him, but really having a hard time convincing people why data collection is so important. And so I just think, reviving this wheel of benefits time and time again, to remind ourselves how many different things, and this list, what's on the wheel of benefits that's not it. There's a lot more. So always paying attention to the idea of how very important mapping of our aquatic resources are. So the data support numerous sectors. We're contributing to CBED 2030 and support NOMEC. What is that? The National for Ocean and Marine something characterization. Sorry, national, something like that. Anyway, something to do with ocean mapping and characterization. We continue to support
The National Ocean Mapping, Exploration and Character.
Thank you. It is. Really, obviously, we've been trying, working closely as possible with the SFMI, helping them get the message out of the great job that's being done by all the contractors in getting the mapping done. And, hopefully with some of the prioritizations that we've undertaken, we've helped, drive, provide them with some information of where the stakeholders want their data. And then, of course, other mapping efforts, universities and otherwise. So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this is where I realize how exciting this is. We started out as a really ragtag bunch back in 2017. Nobody was paid, nobody gave us money. It was just a group of people who had the shared passion of starting this thing up. And the fact that year after year after year, it's continued to grow. We have an official office, the Florida Institute of Oceanography. We have a program coordinator in Christie. We have support from NOAA. And then the language from FCMaP that the message that we were talking about, that wheel of benefits that we were talking up, was then picked up in Tallahassee with some help, but it was picked up in Tallahassee and eventually made it into the legislation. And lo and behold, 100 million for mapping Florida's coastal waters was made available, administered by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. So that's enormous. Everyone in this room should share the pride we have in this. And then FCMaP, we have in 2023 implemented a strategic plan, started a second prioritization, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But the cool thing is, this timeline's gotten so long that I had to make another slide with it. So we're already up to 2025. So again, we completed the deep water prioritization. We did another inventory of existing data in 2024, had a summit, and then we just recently published the deep water prioritization. Is the link to that on the hub?
Yes.
Okay, so if you go to the hub that Christy posted with the QR code, you'll be able to find that publication, and continuing to coordinate with FSMI. And yeah, so anyway, it's cool to be continued. Somehow we have to convince the state to get more money to continue mapping or remap areas that have been disturbed. So that's definitely a dream. I've just put up these prioritization comparisons because I think it's interesting. Is there a white anything?
No, you might have just walked.
Okay,
over.
no, it's all right. I can use the arrow.
Winters never work.
Yeah, that's true. So on the left is the 2019 prioritization, and on the right is the 2023 prioritization. Completely different methods of doing the prioritization, but the reason I put them side by side is just because the brighter the colors, the more they tend toward red and orange. Those were the higher priorities than the areas that are paler orange or yellow. So what I wanted to highlight, if I can stay on my slide or not, I'm going through my whole presentation. You go back on this thing. The arrows hanging. I can't see them. And I'm done.
It's a preview.
That's right. Thank you. I'll use the arrows. I'll use the arrows. I'll use it.
Or use the arrow down.
Thank you. But anyway, you can see that on the left in the 2019 prioritization, the bulk of the highest priorities of the whole stakeholder group contribution were really, hugging the coastline, right? They were in that 0 to 20 meter water depth. And then, so that's why we redid the prioritization in 2023, because we said, all right, if that almost everywhere where LiDAR data can be collected, there's nothing in the 0 to 20 meter that will be collected, or not much of it. There are some areas that would have to be collected by sonar, but we want to redo the prioritization to see, okay, now that we have the shallow water, in that deeper water, where are the prioritization? And so the map on the right shows that. You can see in a similar way, it's blank between the coastline. You see this blank blue space. Well, that's the 0 to 20 meter zone. So once again, the highest priority, not all, but the highest priorities came in kind of that 20 to 40 meter water depth. And so it's interesting to, continuing that idea that the highest priorities tend to be in the shallower waters for the state of Florida. So I'm not, the vendors are here to talk about where they're mapping. I just pulled this down from FSMI's website. I'm not going to go into detail about what any of it is, but this is just the current map pulled down like last week from FSMI's website. And you can see if there's something that's colored on here, it's either currently being collected, has been collected, has been submitted, all the different categories. Again, I'm not going to go through those. You can go to FSMI's website, but you can see how much data there is in that 0 to 20 meter water depth. And not surprisingly, the Big Bend area was difficult to achieve with LiDAR. So that is that. And then similarly, this is the progress and contracted. So this is it. This is what will be collected, as far as I know, of the sonar data. So moving into that 0, and you can see that in some cases, but not all, the state followed the prioritization from FCMaP. I'm gonna go back one. Back two. You can see in 2023, there wasn't a huge priority for this deeper water off the northeast of Florida, but they did in fact contract a lot of that to be covered, which is making sure they had other stakeholders chime in for that prioritization. This is just reinforcing the idea that where 2019 prioritization, again, it's hugging the coast, where the data were contracted to be collected, hugging the coast, like how we were able to provide that information. And similarly, but not in all cases, the areas that have been contracted and where data collection is starting for the sonar data are in general following closer to the shallower water of that deeper water zone. And this is kind of hard to look at. We need to make that gray layer translucent. What you're looking at is the gap analysis, so data collected, and with a caveat, I'll tell you in a minute. This was done the winter of 2024. So any data that were collected this year wouldn't be reflected in here or contracted this year. And this caveat is this was data. We just made this assumption that everything in the 0 to 20 meter water depth was going to be mapped when we, for this inventory, and obviously, especially places in the Big Bend. That wasn't possible. So this is a little bit of a stretch, but this is the gap analysis on the some 2023 prioritization. So you can kind of see where the high priorities areas are and where there were data already collected. And so that actually drove, in some cases, where they contracted more mapping. So just kind of, this is, I like looking at the not just the maps of the data collected, but just kind of comparing the statistics. Again, I'm not going to focus on all the little details in this, but just, I mean, it's really astounding that if we go back to 2017, if you looked at all the entire state, so you added up the entire state, and in that nearshore zone, that shallow water zone, only 27% had ever been mapped using modern high resolution technologies, and just exaggerated because of the Big Bend region, but say it's still high, significantly higher. Maybe we better put that, we'll eventually redo it, but that might be at 75% or something. That's still amazing progress. And what a resource for the state. Similarly, we know we have a really, really wide continental shelf in the 0 to 20 meter water depth here, especially on the west coast of Florida. So in 2017, that number for the entire state was 16% of that deeper water area, and it's jumped to 34%. And that's not even including 2025, where all the sonar mapping's out there happening now. So good job, everybody. And I just wanted to give an overview of updates and one. And I don't know, are there any questions? Anybody have any comments or questions? Online or no, nothing online. Okay, welcome and thanks. Hey, Malcolm.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Malcolm.
Hey, sorry guys, I wasn't sure if you're calling me. Just a question about the percentages, Cheryl, that you shared on the previous slide. Where do those numbers come from?
So they maybe can speak better to that.
Well, as part of the gap analysis, I mean, we inventoried, we did footprints of all of our known mapping areas. So just unifying all those areas together with what we, what the space that we knew could be mapped. So yeah, it's relatively accurate. I mean, there's parts of the footprint that might not have true data, but yeah, they're just footprints that we used.
Yeah, and their source, it's not just FSMI, it's sourced from any NOAA data collections, any university data collections, any state agency data collections outside of FSMI. So yeah, does that answer your question, Elliot? Malcolm?
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Okay, our next presenter is Malcolm.
That was just a mic check. That's all I asked that question for, to warm everybody up.
So you should be able to share your screen, Malcolm.
All right. I may need to be made a presenter. It says only meeting organizers and presenters can share.
Yeah, we should be doing that right now.
Perfect. There we go. Stand by. All right. Let me know when you can see that.
See that.
Good to go.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, I'm Malcolm Elliott. I'm with Fugro, project manager for the 0 to 20 meter airborne LiDAR collection in the Northeast and Southeast region. And I'm proud to be a disembodied voice for you all today. Actually, you know what? I can turn my camera on too. Hopefully that doesn't mess things up.
Yeah, that's good.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see if we can make this happen. So we're going to talk a little bit about the LiDAR system that we're using. We're going to talk about the areas that we have that Fugro has been collecting over the last couple of years, the completion and processing of what it's going to take to get there, and then we're going to do at the same time kind of look at some interesting pictures. So I'll try and go pretty quick through these first couple slides. So we are using the Fugro RAMS Rapid Airborne Multi-Beam Mapping System. It is it's a LiDAR detection unit, a bathy LiDAR unit using the green wavelength. Similar to other units on the market, it's capable of going in an aircraft, and that's what we're using on this project. Not exactly the same setup that you see on the screen here, but very similar. The key benefit to RAMS is that it is relatively low weight compared to other units of similar capacity or similar capability. So that allows us to be a bit more efficient during collection. And this is kind of more of a looking forward. We didn't actually use any drones on this particular project, but this is in the future, we should be able to use the same technology for this type of effort, hopefully. So looking at the actual raw data that the system we're using collects in its raw form. Now, what you're seeing here is quite simply just the 8-bit image, but more so what the computer can see, it's actually a 16-bit range. So you can kind of slide the intensity up and down and discern features from this data set. But when it's actually processed, we can identify the features that are in this one slice. And this image, for lack of a better way to put it, going, across track from, the left-hand side to the right-hand side, is being shot about 60 times per second. And then we derive close to 1,000, not quite 1,000 slices laterally through this image. So that gives us our, 60 hertz, but then we're splitting that into about 1,000, so 60 kilohertz. That's where that number comes from. And then actually looking at the waveform, so splitting that into points, which is the usable data that we're interested in for this project. And that's just kind of one slice. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but that orange line is the one slice, and then the waveform is on the other side. So that's how the points are actually picked. So your water surface and bathy. So one of the revolutionary, I suppose, innovations that's come out of this is this gives us the ability to, in almost real time, classify some of the points and do refraction almost in real time. Of course, there's some QC that has to happen to that. But the benefit is in 1-to-1 processing time after the plane lands. If it's a 4-hour flight, for example, 4 hours later, we know if we've had success or if we need to go do another attempt or generally what the disposition of the seafloor looks like. And then kind of looking into the future, this is a bit out of scope of this project, being able to do water column detection and actual classification of things like seagrasses, bottom types, etc. So a bit of a look back into whenever I did this last year, what we had claimed and what we had completed for these two regions. So we were at about 60% complete and delivered to DEP, and we had the 80% delivery ready to go. And we had said that we'd be able to deliver the 100% in the June to July timeframe. Now, because of when we were able to remobilize last year and some of the environmental constraints, that did not happen. But we will be delivering the 100% hopefully soon, March, at the end of this month or sometime in April. But what did come out of that was a recommended effort to collect offshore and deeper waters, particularly in the Northeast. We were able to get well beyond the 20-meter isobath, whereas in nearshore, and I'll get into that in a little bit as to why in nearshore it's a lot more challenging, similar to what Cheryl was referencing in the Big Bend. It's just off Jacksonville, it's almost impossible to get bathylighter in there in any significant manner. So I'll look back on 2023. So we collected that 60% of the required area. 2024, we collected up to 100% of the data area as of October, or I guess the end of August. Sorry, September. I'm trying to remember whenever Milton went through. And then so in total, we got up to in excess of 300 missions. So we have 299 missions flown online, but that doesn't include extra attempts that were made to go out to do reconnaissance, to see if we could collect, to see if it was possible. And that results in about 120,000 line kilometers attempted. So this year, we're going to go back and we're going to, we have a supplemental area that I can cover further on in the slides, wherever coverage can exist in that deeper water in the 20 to 30 meter range. We're going to go back out and try and collect it. It's about 3,500 square kilometers. So operationally, every time we do a calibration or every time we do an install and mobilize to this region, we do our tests over the universal test site in Fort Lauderdale, the same as other bathy systems. We do have a multi-beam truthing site over this area, and initially when we did this, we collected man-made targets so that we could actually, identify our target detection and accuracies and all those fun things, and so that we can do actual validation of the data. And these were temporarily installed; they're no longer there, but this was 2023. We did this install, but we still have this data set that we can use to go back. There's not a whole lot of movement here. And I mean, if you're in this industry, you know that this area has been mapped. I'm sure nobody really knows how many times bathylighter has been flown over the site. And then this is just one of the cross sections of what we saw earlier. So the bathylighter are collecting one of those cubes, and I believe that's 13 meters of water depth, 1 meter cube. So on to our actual project areas and when we collected, why we collected, what we collected. So it's kind of hard to see the contour lines, or I suppose the trend lines on this map, but Cheryl said you can see my mouse. So this area here is when we began collection in 2023. We started as soon as we got the notice to proceed. It was the beginning of July, and we collected until just after the new year. So in this area here, this is kind of off of Jacksonville, but in the deep water area. So in the roughly 30 meter range. So all year, I mean, if you can get over this line, it says 30 meters, but this is dramatically exaggerated on the y-axis, which is why I've chopped it off at 10 meters. We really want to see these. We really want to see these values up and over 30 meters. So what we're looking at is roughly all year in that deep water, we are able to get penetration, but we are able to get the best penetration here. Now, this line here, this is closer to shore, so it's in around the 10 meter water range. At 3 Secchi, but again, these are best case conditions, so it was very, very, very challenging to get that. And then, of course, this sort of out of phase, if you will, this is more kind of similar to areas like the Keys. This is in Miami, so it's less influenced by things like your rainy season, and the areas in the Northeast are more influenced by surf and that type of thing. So this is a kind of a repeat from what you'd seen last year, but as I mentioned in the previous slide, June and July are the more likely areas to succeed. So this is where we first targeted. This is one of the more challenging places in the state to collect topobathy lidar, and right up to the shoreline in the first 10 meters or so is almost impossible to collect bathy lidar, but we still did our attempts to meet the contract. And looking at where we actually did get collection, this really rough 4-kilometer grid is what we expected to achieve in the best possible conditions. So it actually does kind of line up with where we have our loose coverage. And then this is just kind of a few more examples of the same thing. Is this a good day for collection? Is it a bad day for collection? There's no right answer. You can't plan for this. You've got blue skies. It's not raining. You're kind of gambling a little bit. So there's a lot of reflies as a result of this. And given the contract, we are required to do 3 attempts for best effort. There's going to be holes remaining. And the same with this. So from day to day, hour to hour, and really minute to minute, and you'll see some more examples of that further on in the slideshow. It's a challenge. So we have everything from coverage to no coverage in the same line, even at the same depth. So it's difficult. And then this is an image from one of the, and I quote, one of the best days for nearshore conditions in this area. And it's just, you can see the active transport of sediment going down the coast. So it's one of the cases, if you go swimming in that water, you're going to come out more sandy than you would if you rolled around on the beach. And you can see the same. So this is the trend. So it's quite literally all the sediment coming out of the St. Mary's and St. John's River, and then being kind of sucked in by the eddies kind of along the coast down to Cape Canaveral. So even though that is what we were contending with, we were still able to get some results, and in particular in that farther from shore area. So this is very preliminary, but once we get to about the 10-meter-ish isobath, that is where we do start to see coverage. And again, it does become intermittent with our, whenever we do our attempts. And I'm sure these shapefiles look very familiar and kind of reflect the multi-beam areas that I'm sure we'll see lots later. But the pink tiles, and this does make it look worse than it actually is, but the pink tiles are, our voids from 2023, and the turquoise is from 2024. And then in the southeast, we do have a lot better penetration, just the same as in the northeast, out to the edge of the AOI. And then again, we're going to go back this year and try and get to extinction. But at the same time, we do have a lot more success in that nearshore area. And similarly, the same shape files that I'm sure you're all familiar with. So looking at some cool data. So I've got a couple slides of this. This is off of St. Lucie. So there's a nuclear power station. There's an inlet and an outlet. It's kind of some cool features. Our data processors were kind of asking, oh, what the heck is this? What are we looking at? And they sent that kind of heart in chat. We're about a month late for Valentine's Day, but save it for next year. And then when they started digging into it, it kind of became apparent what it actually was. And then we get lots of fun shipwrecks or artificial reefs that we know about. Some that maybe we don't know about, but these are ones we do know offshore of St. Lucie. These are already charted. And then where we do have good data near shore, this is just a good example of penetration that you'd see in the nearshore area. It's just colorized by imagery, but I mean, you got a swimming pool here, and then you get your water surface, and bathy starts to diverge. And wherever we have good water quality or like this, typically we're going out all the way to extinction. And then this is where I'm going to talk about something rather interesting and academic, is active seafloor movement. So one of the things that we contend with and when I say we, I mean in the industry, bathy LiDAR, you tend to see a lot of, fake bathy. So is it really bathy, or is it fluff in the water column that looks like bathy? That's kind of the everyday challenge. Now with the RAM system, as I mentioned earlier, it's a little bit easier to discriminate. But in cases like this, it does get really interesting. So this is one mission that we flew last August, mid-August, south of Cape Canaveral. This was all collected in one mission, so one sortie, and our missions aren't any longer than 4 hours, so that's about the time frame that you can expect this to be collected in. And we're actually finding some of these seafloor, I mean, we're calling them seafloor features, but they're kind of moving sand waves. There's one series of large moving sand waves that, as we pass over them, they're in a slightly different spot from pass to pass. So it's not uncommon to see this, particularly before and after storms, but because of the actual volume and movement of water in this area, we were surprised to see it so quickly. The rate of movement was really fascinating to see. So you can see, so this is just a cross section of two lines. So the green would be before, and you can see on the right-hand side that the data roughly lines up. And then as the sand wave comes in and moves through, the seafloor actually moves by some amount after the sand wave has passed. And you can see some more examples of that. So this is the kind of thing, particularly in the Northeast, that we happen to capture here. And I mean, it just really, it identifies what we're having to deal with. And this is something that we have to deal with in LiDAR, but I mean, you can imagine even in multi-beam, it would be, very similar from day to day, line to line. You'd have very extreme busts. So another path profile. And when I first saw this, my first question was, well, is it fake bathy? And this is kind of what I mentioned before. You usually see this sediment load, something in the water column that, it isn't actually a legitimate feature. And then you can see, so the train is moving from west to east. So it is a case of following that, you have this large void area, and this is a result of suspended sediments following the wave. So I'm not sure if something's being kicked up or exactly what it is in this case. And then this is just another example from line to line. So why this is kind of also fun is the LiDAR point cloud is time stamped. So every point has a GPS time down to the second. So we can actually go ahead and we can identify from peak to peak, from pass to pass, how much time has elapsed between the passes. So in this case, we were able to look at the GPS times. Again, the purple wave was first, and then I guess that's a turquoise wave, followed it. So we can measure, there's 6 minutes, 45 seconds between these two passes. And again, these are adjacent flight lines. So one was flown, and then the plane would turn around and come back and fly the other way. So we were able to look at a few places and actually do some calculation of this, and we're able to see that, we're moving at about, 0.16 meters per second, or about as fast as somebody would be able to walk. So these aren't slow moving features. And looking forward, for us, at least in Fugro, so we're going ahead and, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to try and deliver this data set by the end of March, possibly into April. We're going to remobilize also in April and work on that. I guess it's 3,700 square kilometers between the Northeast and Southeast. And if there's any infill, I don't imagine that there's going to be any infill that hasn't already been covered by the multi-beam solicitation. Then that will be filled in. So I mean, that would only be places where, if we had corrupt data or something. But we are delivering the 100% collection area that we stated that we collect to DEP or deliver to DEP. So that's all I have. Any questions, comments? I see hands clapping, but I can't hear it, so I'll hear it in my head.
Yeah, a question, Malcolm. So very interesting what you're seeing with the wave, the patterns over time. Is there anything in the data that indicates intensity or maybe a second return indicates whether those waves that seem to be transiting, are they denser than surrounding areas or anything that indicates, what the consistency of that's like?
Not necessarily. I mean, we know that it's a sandy bottom in that case. I mean, that's what that is. But no, I mean, it's not penetrating that surface in any way.
It's as dense as the surrounding
Yeah.
sand and moving at
Yeah.
that speed.
So it's like, I mean, you can and this is kind of what caught me off guard when I started looking at this too, is like, is this legitimate bathy? And I mean, it depends on how you look at it. It's legitimate when we collected it, but tomorrow probably not, right?
That creates a challenge in trying to represent those areas.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, your guess is as good as mine trying to do an accuracy, cross line on that.
Building on that, what's the relief of those features?
Those features that I showed there are about a meter or so tall, then by 10 meters in length.
How tall? 1 meter?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay, thank you. Questions online?
There's one. Are the
I see.
data, oh, you can see it.
Yeah, so the southeast data is, I can't speak for when it will be available to the public, but that's the area that we're going to be delivering hopefully sooner than later to the state. Like I said, we're targeting at the end of March to be delivering that, but it's one of the bigger challenges that we're facing right now is going through and cleaning that. And like I think I showed a cross section of a topobath area. I can go back and can I go back? This one here. So we've got a lot of this in the southeast to contend with, and in the scope of work, we're required to deliver data or bathymetric data from the water line down. And there's a lot of, in this land water interface, this is the most challenging area to clean. So we're actively working on that right now. And we're hoping it'll be done by the end of March. And then so however long it takes the state to turn around, do the review, all those fun things. And we hope the review is quick. So that's more of a question maybe when DEP does their presentation.
Anything else?
Okay. Thank you, Malcolm. That was
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. So our next presenter is Emily with Dewberry. You can switch it back from that. Let me share my screen. And it's with the screen, right? There you go.
The currents and how deep they can penetrate. That's what it's related to the sediment, grain size and composition, but your depth, your bed level will vary depending. Their depth. It does not make sense. Speed, yeah.
Back to slide one.
Oh, no, not my slide.
Close your eyes real quick. Okay.
I am Emily Clip from Dewberry. I'm going to talk to you about updates on our couple regions for Florida seafloor. So to get started, as you heard from Malcolm and Cheryl on the background, our part of the Florida seafloor mapping initiative started in the summer of 20. When two regions, and that was the Panhandle and the Big Bend regions. And then a few months later, we were also awarded the Southwest Gulf region. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that, as well as some of the successes and challenges that we've kind of crossed along the way since then. So I guess the first, real success was as we started flying these regions, it became very clear that we were able to achieve seafloor returns beyond that the boundary was set, the offshore boundary was set at the 20-meter isobath, and we were able to achieve returns beyond that boundary. So because of that, we worked with FDEP, all the vendors worked with FDEP to extend these boundaries and add supplemental areas to these regions. And those supplemental areas for LiDAR were defined by using the work that the FCMaP completed to kind of focus in on the priority areas. So those were definitely kept in mind when creating these supplemental boundaries. So when all said and done, within these three regions with the original and the supplemental areas, we were awarded over 34,000 square kilometers, which is for us US people, 13,000 of this area. So challenge, right? Wide area mapping. This is a huge area. So many different environments, which I'll talk about in a little bit, as well as, so we knew we wanted to fly our deep channel sensor, the seasonal supernova. We own two, and we work with our partner field to third. So flying three sensors in this presents its own set of challenges. We have to boresight each of the sensors. They're boresighted over land and kiln, as well as depth bias boresighting in Fort Lauderdale. If any sensor issues arise and we need to take the sensor off to fix it and put it back on, that's two more bore sightings, right, that we need to do. So lots of moving pieces going on with this area mapping and these projects. And as I kind of mentioned before, it's a large area with a very dynamic environment, and each kind of region has its own environmental changes and the different weather and water conditions throughout the area. There's a lot of things that can happen in each area. So we have all the river systems flowing out into the Gulf. We've got the currents, and storms affect each area differently. And so it's a lot of monitoring over a wide area. So we do have a few tools that we use. This is just a few and many that we use a lot of online resources. NOAA's Now Coast Watch Portal. Windy is great for forecasting. And we also worked with the partner T-Carta to help provide us water quality metrics that were derived from satellite imagery to kind of give us, we were able to get these metrics the day after, so we were able to kind of determine trends through time and kind of use that to predict what it might hold in these areas. And then, of course, last winter, El Nino was a particular challenge. It brought a more wet and windy season than normal, so they're not able to get as much flying as initially anticipated. So we did work with DEP and kind of get the schedules extended. So we had more time to come back by more. And then so we're collecting data, right? So SeasMill is a waveform resolving system, which means lots of raw data, lots of waveforms. So if we have three sensors, we try and get 2 flights a day, 2 missions in a day. Each mission is 2.5 terabytes. So with the 3 sensors and 2 flights, that's 15 terabytes a day. So and, we're flying as much as possible. So this data was calculated about a month ago. So we are closer to 4 petabytes now. And by the time we're done collecting, we'll be a little bit over 4 petabytes of raw data that we're working with. So. And then with that data, we use the Keras Space Editor with its seasonal module. And this allows us to take in the data and interrogate those waveforms, which I'll speak about here in a minute. As well as, we have a close partnership with Teledyne. So it's fortunate if we find parameters that we want to tweak or processing inputs that look a little different, we can work with Teledyne to kind of, they can go and their developers can work with us to kind of tweak out anything we might be seeing and help resolve data. So waveform analysis, as I said, supernova is waveform processing. Sensor does have 8 channels plus an infrared channel. So that really helps us if we are coming across areas where we're seeing after post-processing the data, we might see anomalies that we think that shouldn't be that way. We can kind of dive in, see what's going on. So this is your typical waveform. On the left is the deep water returns. So you'll see that first top left is the deep channel. And in deep areas, you'll see that we're only getting that first peak, which is the water surface, and the second peak is the seafloor. And so you'll see that is only being resolved in the deep channel in those deeper waters. And then on the right is our shallow water, typical shallow water returns. Again, you get a water surface and a seafloor from all 7 shallow water channels, as well as typically from the deep water channel as well. So these are standard forms that we want to see. We don't always see those. Sometimes because of fog or sea spray, we might get a false water surface return. And so that that's with the rest of the returns and create weird noise layers in the data. So when we see this, we know that we look back to those waveforms, determine what's going on, and kind of restructure those parameters to allow the algorithms to select that proper water surface return. And sometimes we don't get a water surface return at all. So there's a clear peak here. Should be getting a nice water surface there, but for whatever reason, settings are such that we're not getting that. So again, we can identify those areas and work with Teledyne or the processing parameters and tweak out that water surface and have that data back. And ultimately, that will provide data going from what you see on the left to what you see on the right. So the blue are our class 40 points. The orangey is the class 0, which is essentially topo. And so we went from our standard processing parameters on the left there. So we're getting data, but there's gaps. So we go back, we look, we just see how we can tweak those parameters, and we do that, and then we'll go back and we can see that we are able to get many more seafloor returns. And so updates, why we're here. That the tiles were not updated in your map. So I will look into that and see if there's some kind of SD connection going on.
Yeah.
This is the Panhandle area. We are 99% have data collected for 99% of the original area, and then now 96% of that supplemental area, for a total of 90% of the whole Panhandle region, of which 64% of the original region data has been delivered and accepted by DEP. And I will say, these are quick look rasters. So this is not the process data. This is simply a raster created from all of the data processed out of the seasonal system, and it's the lowest elevation. So you'll see in particular areas here down by Cedar Key where it's kind of has a nice seafloor look, and then it goes up and you'll see that orange crunchy looking data, and that's indicative of we're not getting seafloor returns to that bottom, that lowest elevation is going to be somewhere in the water column of the water surface. So that's what we're seeing here. But Big Bend, we're still acquiring it. Big Bend is doable. It's just you have to find the right time. So we are still working on this right now, and we have about 75% of that original region collected, which is the vast majority of it. The supplemental area in this region was only 1,000 square kilometers, so it was pretty small, but of that we have 72% collected for an overall of 75%, of which 43% of that original region data has been delivered and accepted by DEP. That's Gulf, our largest region, and our most collected region is we have collected 100% of that original region, and we're up to, I think that number's off. I think we're more than 82% now of the supplemental area. You'll see we have a few brief lights that we're working on, and then the southwestern corner there that we're working on, and that corner does go beyond 30 meters as well. And something to add is we are collecting data, to the boundary and a little bit beyond the boundary, and we have yet to reach laser extinction. So that's been really exciting that supplemental boundary goes to about 30 meters in most cases. So that's been really exciting to see. And then an overall summary of all three regions, both regional and supplemental areas, 87% collected overall, with 4% of those initial deliveries delivered and accepted by DEP. So we do anticipate, we're flying now, we have all three sensors on site in various areas as conditions allow, and we anticipate wrapping up by the end of March. We have had a little bit of a rough week this week with the front that came through, really stirred things up along Big Bend down to the Southwest Gulf. So soon, and we'll be back on full swing. So in the next month, we have acquisition complete, and then all preliminary and final data is due and will be taken to DEP by the end of September. So it is far out. And of course, have to find the pretty pictures. I'm sure Rick's gonna upstage me next. Just a few fun wrecks that are just off the coast here. And got the Ruby Allen Reef and the Clearwater Barge site. That in the DIM, and as well as those profiles, Veterans Reef and good tanks. Again, as well. That's up here. That's what I have. Oh, thank you, everyone.
I'm going to start.
Yeah.
With the data that was collected off of Tampa and south,
Yeah.
what was the timing of that relative to the hurricanes of last fall?
Actually, the original regions, the majority of the data collected, looking at stuff here, I think all of the data in the original regions were collected prior to the hurricanes. Most of it.
Okay, great.
Supplemental, some before, some after. So we know there is going to be some temporal variations, and we're going to provide polygons that.
We have a good recent pre-storm topography data set.
With the exclusion of the Big Bend.
No, I get that, but
yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Are there any questions online? Anyone else? Okay.
It's from Brian Walker. It says, are you able to determine sediment versus hard bottom with the reflectance data?
With LiDAR. Yes, I'm not going to say for certain, but yes, you can use the reflectance data to help determine what the morphology of the bottom is. We have not currently, done diving into that for this data set in particular. It's something that you can use reflectance.
Well, Just to clarify for
and
the
that's not a
group,
deliverable.
that's not, yeah, it's not a deliverable, but I think all the vendors are collecting it. So, yeah.
And Brendan?
Emily, were you also, although not a deliverable, collecting hyperspectral during these?
Imagery is,
Back to your plane slide, you have 3 planes with an instrument in each plane, so you rotate in and out.
they're all flying all the time. Well, as much as they can. Yeah. And we're usually based out of Tampa, but if we need to focus on Panhandle or further south.
Emily, thanks for the talk. You guys have done an awful lot of work. Sure. I just a question on your instrument. What do you assume the vertical resolution is? Of your estimates.
So the project was planned at the project was planned at, the spec is 2 points per square meter based off of first return. We planned it at 8 points per square meter. So we're exceeding that and, that's for return, right? So that's water surface. So our seafloor returns are usually about 2 points per square meter.
Oh, what's the vertical resolution? Plus or minus? 25 centimeters?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
yeah.
Another question on mine.
John says, have you all seen many shipwrecks?
So many shipwrecks. Both those that have been, that are marked and
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Emily. Appreciate it. As Emily pointed out, right?
it is that.
Yes, Emily is always a tough act to follow.
Yeah.
She intimidates me so much, I had to bring another person to help me.
Rick and Karen will be tag teaming this, I believe. So
We are.
Great. Thank you.
I'll
interrupt him intermittently.
It will be like our marriage. Yes. Yeah, so thank you. And like I said, it's always tough to bring up the rear, but I do have help. I'm Rick Householder. I'm the program director for Region 3, our assignment. And this is?
I'm Karen Hart. I'm the airborne lidar bathymetry discipline leader. So I'm in charge of the group that does all the data processing and data delivery for projects like this.
So we thought we would have another take on it, get a little bit more technical with Karen here,
But not that much.
but not that much. And RJ is going to be talking about the sonar, so give him a little acknowledgement there. So first and foremost, we want to just tell you a little bit about Wolpert. We were founded in 1911. I always like to say we were doing geospatial before there was geospatial. So we are an architectural engineering and geospatial company. We have over 35 offices worldwide and over 2,000 employees, and that is growing quite rapidly. So I won't go through all this, but as far as the geospatial numbers, we spend about $70 million on invested in LiDAR technology. We have over 1,200 geospatial professionals, over 2,000 LiDAR projects, and over 50 countries that we are working in. I always like this slide, this word cloud. There's almost nothing. I'll say, my boss is here, so I'll say, there's nothing we can't do with geospatial. And I'm certainly not going to read off all of these, but what we're going to concentrate on, obviously, is the LiDAR aspect. So I think most of you know by now, and being the third presenter, we have 2 types of LiDAR. We have the terrestrial, we have the bathymetric LiDAR. 1064 nanometers in wavelength for the terrestrial and 532 for the bathymetric. So that's what we're focusing on. And I think we all know the regions. One thing I want to point out on this slide, and this was actually taken from the story map, and that is the benefits of why we're doing FSMI. But the one thing I wanted to point out here is this $28 million of return on investment. And I think we, especially in this room, we all know how important that aspect is these days. So that kind of highlights this whole effort that we're all doing. So we were awarded Region 3 in October of 2023, originally 20,000 square kilometers. So we have a big piece of the pie. And that actually grew to over 7,000 square kilometers because of the supplemental areas. And we'll be talking about that in just a minute. So we are teaming with NV5. Is NV5? So we are teaming with them to meet the September 25 deadline. So how do you take an area this size and how do you break this thing up into bite-sized chunks so it's manageable? And that was our first challenge, especially since we came in a little bit later in the game. Karen, you want to mention anything about this?
Yeah.
You helped set this up.
I drew those polygons, and basically you break it up into blocks and you try to send up 4 to 5 aircraft out to collect all this data in the short amount of time we have to collect it. And then you learn that you drew all these areas kind of wrong and you deliver it in not those nice chunks, but whatever you can, whenever you get it processed. That's what we learned. But it was a good plan and we got out there and like I said, 5 planes at once at one point trying to collect all this because we got a late start.
And that late start did cause us to rapidly put this into place. So there were changes and there were so we talked about the supplemental areas, but the area in white is our original AOI. So the colored areas are the supplemental areas. Those are areas that if we can go deeper, if we can go into extinction, it was agreed with FDEP that we could grab these areas too. So you have the green at dry tortugas, got 20 to 30 in the blue, and then 30 to 40 in the pink. And I always like to think of the pink as the icing on the cake. Is that why we painted it that way?
I just chose pink randomly.
Oh, okay. I'm kind of backing into that one.
Yeah.
So we are, as far as our LiDAR assets, we have a total of 5 aircraft, as Karen mentioned, 5 sensors, the Leica Terra and Hawkeye models 4X and 5X. I had a chance, I teach down at Nova Southeastern University. I had a chance to bring my students out to see these particular sensors. So that is me posing for the students. And students got a big kick out of seeing these in Fort Lauderdale.
Also getting in trouble for touching the sensor.
I think I'm leaning on it, actually. Who would know, except when it's on the picture. So our acquisition and flight plan, our sensors are flown at about 480 meters in altitude. Each line is about 50 kilometers long. Our plan, or each spacing is about 300 meters. Plan swath width about 350 meters and about a 20% overlap. Now, in theory, we can get down to 50 meters. Now, obviously, those have to be very perfect conditions, right?
Which in the Keys was almost attainable. I think our deepest is about 45 to 47 meters in the southern part of the Keys. It's great. And in their supplemental area, when we flew further west, we know we got past 30 to 40. So we can actually extend that further if we had the time, but we're running out of time.
Yeah. And again, this is just another look at.
Lines look pretty close when you look at it like that.
They are pretty.
A lot of mowing
tight.
the lawn, back and forth.
So this is, like I said, there's our original AOI in the white area, but you can see that we have gotten the majority of the area of interest, the original area of interest, and obviously that area in pink being the supplemental, that's being filled in as we speak.
We've actually flown all of that and we have some coverage that's come back just in the last couple of weeks. But it's not pretty enough to really show on a PowerPoint presentation, so it's not included here, but we're really just on reflights. We've deployed several times, so we're going to redeploy here in a few weeks again, just to finish everything out finally.
So the one aspect of this, when you look at Marathon, where we operated for much of the time, what could go wrong here?
We were really excited about going to the Keys. 'Cause
So while the planes are flying, Jeff,
What a
you didn't
gift.
hear this, we're sitting out on lawn chairs and just taking it all in, listening to Jimmy Buffett music. However, it is not to be, because as you can see, this is probably the most active area in hurricane season anywhere in the United States. Now, it diverges into the Gulf, it curves out to the east, but that is ground zero. Right? So we have to contend with this. So weather has always been the biggest stumbling block here. Now, particularly in 23 and into 24, we had an extremely active winter with constant storm fronts coming through. And even when those fronts came through and they pushed through Florida, as we know very quickly, it's still going to take 2 days or so to get that turbidity cleared out. So even when I get on the phone and I go, hey, why aren't we flying today? It's a beautiful day in the Keys because I live in West Palm Beach and it's not that far. And usually what's going on there is happening in West Palm. And they'll say, you know what? It really takes at least 2 days for all that to settle down.
Yeah, we go there, especially where our original area was. It's pretty shallow and flat. And what that leads to is even if the wind blows pretty hard, all that fetch, it really builds up the sediment, churns it up. I know this has been mentioned on a couple of presentations before us, but it doesn't just churn up the sediment, it just sits there. And it takes a long time to filter out. And you know what? Light just does not penetrate that. We've collected a lot of bad data. The water looks beautiful mostly, but we do collect a lot of bad data and have to go back out.
So we had actually over 90 down days in our first year. Now, we also, like she was saying, environmental conditions we have to contend with. There's always mechanical issues. These aircraft have to go through regular maintenance. There's downtime, and that doesn't always align with the downtime we have with weather. So that has to be taken. This is where Karen comes in, processing of petabytes of data, extremely tight schedule, and even natural events such as red tide, which we actually saw just a couple weeks ago. We also had a FCMaP that was as big as Texas coming at us at some point, and a lot of prayers and other things, I think, broke that apart.
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky though in this project. I mean, I think all of the contractors have. I mean, we plug the client here. FDEP's been really good about working with us to get the data collected. I mean, I know they want really great data. So, we're going to go back out there and try to collect as much as we can, even if we have conditions like this. Sometimes it's a lost cause, however. So you have turbidity. This is the Everglades. We flew it. It was there. We did not get that much. And it looks like this all the time. But sometimes looks like a clear day, clear water, but you have still some sediment plumes in the water. You can still see the bottom. Probably can get something there, but there'll be patches. And then, of course, another one that is, I think maybe Malcolm had a similar kind of image where, in these channels, yeah, if you go into the water there, you will come back out.
Or other stuff.
Or whatever. And the sargassum, like this is what it looks like. Reader's not going to go see through that. That's not. In fact, we have to wait for that to clear up. We have a lot of pretty pictures, of course, even of the challenges we see. So this is again around the coastal Everglades. Get a few more images, and then I was told by the field that manatees may be a problem. And it's not because there's just a lot of manatees and everybody wants to see a manatee in a point cloud. We did not get that. But as y'all may know, manatees eat a lot and they also make a lot of waste and it gets churned up in the water column. They were assuring me that is the problem here in certain areas. Turbidity.
Sounds plausible.
All right, so I guess I have to talk about processing here. So we have challenges, but sometimes our data is really clean and sometimes it isn't. What we do is all of those aircrafts collecting data with their various sensors. It's a big data management, challenge. I'm sure Emily knows this. And When we get back every mission, we run it through a software package called LiDAR Survey Studio, which is LSS made by Leica Survey Studio. And that basically gets our data from waveform into point. And we process our trajectories and so on. When we get that back, we have these point clouds. We generally use TerraScan tools. We don't use Keras, but we use TerraScan to look at the point cloud. That's where you see that image on the lower left. The blue point cloud, this is a cross section, looking down. The blue is the seafloor, but you can see there's stuff in the water column. So you have the sea surface reflection that's expected. And obviously you get the sea surface and you know how deep it is, but once you get the last reflector, or hopefully the last one from the seafloor, that's the water depth. But you also have some stuff that may be blocking signal. So what we have to do is get that point cloud. We can run some automatic algorithms, macros on the data process, in the data processing side, clear some of that out, but sometimes it just takes a manual intervention. So people are looking at this, drawn, circles around those dots and classifying them in this case as noise. That's almost the final process, and then we will deliver the products from the point cloud and the grid. So as far as how far we've gotten through processing, we delivered 80% preliminary data set, and our 100% deliveries, and also at the end of September for us. But that means we have to do all of the processing from the last 20% of the original area, all of the processing for the supplemental, the extra 7,000 square kilometers, and all of the data products to deliver by the end of September. So we're working through all of this right now. And by Dewberry and everybody else, we're trying to schedule this to deliver this not all at once. Yeah. Sometimes, like we were talking about, we can't do anything to the data that's good enough not to leave a void. Sometimes we can't. So we might collect the data and it shows a void in the initial coverage, but then we can go in and add some data back in. So in this case, the blue line seems to end at some yellow and orange. There's actually a bottom there. We just have to go and put it back in. So we can fill in a lot of this data set. So this is pretty manual. Sometimes it's automatic. Or, constantly going through the data, trying to get enough filled in so we don't have to go back out. That's expensive. It's less expensive for people to go and do the post-processing. So that's what, but sometimes it's inevitable. We can't do it. So we can have to reply. Then we have what we worked out with FDEP is to identify these gaps that we can't get after we've flown it 2 or 3 times, working with them to generate these polygons that they use then for planning for the sonar data gaps if they're on the priority. Or, sometimes we have to go back and fly them again because there just might be a time of year that's better and we're out there. So we've gone back and built things in that way. But I think this is the part that everybody's waiting for. I know Rick has been waiting, I don't know, all day for this.
Not to be outdone by
Over to you.
Emily. Okay, let's see what we got. Let's.
I want you to know that I made all these things, though.
Okay. I get to present them. So for this, now, if you're over 40 years old, you would probably recognize this guy. What does he look like? Snoopy? Snoopy? No?
I was thinking Gonzo, honestly.
Okay.
Thank you.
So for a Wolpert calendar, which Vanna is displaying here.
Okay, well, run these.
What is Gonzo or Snoopy? What sea creature is he looking at?
Dirto.
What is it?
The Dirto?
Girl? No. What is this sea creature?
The sea dragon.
What was it? I think we got a winner.
Calendar?
You get a calendar. I'm telling you, since we're going last.
The answer? I didn't hear it.
Or Jefferson.
Or Jefferson, and
I thought you were asking about the shape of it.
Oh.
actually
Did you-
Burn
did you-
Island Cay.
You get a calendar too.
And that, on that calendar, if you want to hold that up there, real quick, that is
Oh, yeah.
that
There you go.
image. Okay, so that is Fort Jefferson. If you've never been to Fort Jefferson, I highly recommend it. It is an experience. Okay,
Yes, we find shipwrecks.
we find shipwrecks. There are some that we're not going to tell you about. Early.
There's only one that's started so far.
So the Vandenberg, this went down in, what was that? They sunk this as an artificial reef, I believe.
Yeah, I think in
2000. Yeah, right. So this is about 45 meters, second largest artificial reef in the world. Unfortunately, this one actually has caused a lot of diver deaths because of people getting caught in there.
It's a good example of like the extinction of LiDAR though. You can see how the bottom in the lower left image, the bottom, you can see it going out and then this boat just is there. So we can't see the bottom actually. That was too deep. It's about 50 meters. But we got the rest of the structure.
Okay. Here's another one.
example. The
Maple
bottom.
Grove, no bottom, but sticks out. It's like a little toy tug right there, lower left. One of my favorite ones is the Pickles Reef off of Key Largo. Being able to see the details of those coral reefs. Coral mounds.
There's so much coral. It is really interesting to see some of these. It's great, yeah. I don't know if it's dead, but it is there. Can't tell that from mine, sorry.
Getting there, maybe. But these are, we're calling these the quicksands. You want to tell a little bit about the geomorphology of this?
Yeah, this is, I
interesting.
don't know if anybody that's oceanographer, geologist, you see these are sand waves that are intersecting. What that tells me is the current there is maybe pretty dangerous. And this was named the quicksands because from what I read, it's between Marquesas Key and the Tortugas. It's shoal there, it's shallow. And between like the 1700s and 1900s, there were a lot of shipwrecks. And they're not really visible because they get buried pretty fast in this area. But like there's a hurricane, it just runs right up there and ships can get wrecked right there. So that was named the quicksands. I'm wrong about that, I apologize, but.
But I think the amazing aspect of this is the detail that you can see of the sand in different directions.
Luckily, we collected that on one day, so we're not going to see any weird, like jointed sand. You know, that's not what you're seeing there, so.
Here's a coral reef off of Key Largo and Tavernier. And you see the coral mounds and how much they stick up.
Yeah, some of these corals, they stick up maybe 5 meters off the seafloor or bigger, 5 to 7, they're big.
So if you know around Big Pine Key, there's a lot of channels there, and I think the geomorphological features really jump out. Both Karen and I are both geologists, so to see something like this is really exciting. And of course, we have other shipwrecks. This one is interesting because this is the barge artificial reef off of Key Biscayne. And you can see the laser going down to extinction. So it dropping off very quickly on that eastern side of the peninsula. So this one we had a lot of fun with. I truly believe it's a UFO landing site. We haven't caught any yet. But as we dug into this was actually a special that was done, right?
Yeah, these are actually known former like cenotes, basically, when this area was not submerged. The surface water would erode out these large holes, basically, and flow through underneath the limestone there. And then sea level rose, these got filled in. At the bottom of these, there's like whole environments, like whole
Complex
habitats.
ecosystems.
Habitats, yes, exactly. And so we found 2 of them in our area so far. I guess there's quite a lot in the region just north of there, the southwest, where Emily was talking about. I don't know if Emily saw those at all, but there's quite a lot of those that are known. But couldn't find any, this was not marked anywhere.
So the topobathymetric aspect of the LiDAR allows us not only to see what's under the water, but on the surface, palm trees, a lighthouse. This is also in the Dry Tortugas. Also seeing what the Everglades look like from this aspect.
Yeah, we had a good day that day. We could actually see some bathing in between those mangroves. Pretty shallow.
This one, I think, it really sticks out is seeing the detail of these spur and groove fingers sticking out. Okay. Last contest question. Okay, do we have one more calendar left? I believe we do. Okay. This surprised even Karen, a very seasoned processor. So what are
Kite surfers.
Kite surfers.
boom? We have a winner.
I live right near Lasting Park where they are every time there's wind.
This is, we're gonna have to, this is not part of your data set, though. We have to remove that. It is like not, we have to remove.
So it's not in the calendar?
It's not in the calendar. But it's also not gonna be delivered as actual real data. Sorry. We know it's there. There for now.
I was given this at another presentation and somebody said, would the lasers like penetrate the fabric? And I said, it's a laser, not a phaser. And with that, and I think we've given away everything we have. Do we have any questions?
I was wondering what program you guys use to get your UAs and your meat seal. Do you feed data or do you use something different?
We process all our trajectories through, I'm blanking.
Well, you said the therapy and microstate.
Yeah, we do everything at the end. We use FME and VDA to shift everything.
Okay.
I mean, it might be, I don't know.
Anything else?
Is there any, oh,
Yep.
How was your data collection in Hawk Channel, south of Key West and heading towards Marathon?
Actually, that one, we had to do several times.
Yeah, I think we had a few data gaps to fill there.
Yeah.
We actually may have left gaps there. I have all this data, access to it if anybody's interested in seeing the second remote to show the coverage and sheets, if anyone has interested in.
See, this
things specific.
has been a problematic area right now.
At the middle of Florida Bay at all? Do you have trouble in there?
Yeah, where's that?
In the middle,
Right. I mean, right over in here?
no, over. Right here.
Pick it up and show us.
Right here. It's really murky in here. So I was
Oh,
that's
yeah,
what we-
yeah.
Yeah, that's a gap.
that is a gap? Okay,
gap.
I was wondering, thanks.
Yeah, that area, this one was particularly pesky, and this one, right, just east of Dry Tortugas, that one we didn't think we were going to get, and you guys worked really hard on that, and that came out.
Yeah,
really
that was
nice.
interesting because the between the Tortugas and the Florida Keys there.
A lot of turbidity there.
Well, it basically funnels water through. And so we had a tidal issue. So we had to wait for a slack tide to fly that really quick and then go back because otherwise the tide was pushing sediment through that.
What
We're
would
all
you,
oceanographers now.
I'm gonna ask you.
I have a degree in that.
While you're in, what would you say is the most challenging area that we had? Is it in this area?
pointers to the people online.
So
Use
there's-
Oh, yeah,
There's-
yeah, because that one is one that we have flown several times.
I think the surprise challenge actually was down here in the southern part. Can you see my son?
It doesn't come out there? No, I don't have a laser. No?
Well, I was gonna, do you want me to, I can try to do it full presentation.
maybe there might be like a menu hidden behind the. Usually there's like a point. Oh, it's, there you go. Yeah.
Now it's, yeah.
Yeah, so the surprise was this area and basically sediment just sits right here. We thought we'd have kind of more of the keys type of weather and clarity, I guess. But this was just not cooperating. And it even like, you know, borders all the way up over there into our supplemental part. We kind of understood that near shore Everglades, sometimes over here, we wouldn't really, we were hopeful and we tried to fly at the right times of year. But it was not helpful. And then we really, I guess there's three, like, so that, and that was not, I think this was the surprise. And this area here, man, we had like a really great day and had this clean cross line, north, south, all the way through everything. And it was just breaking up these gaps that we had on the next day. So we went back like 6 times, 7 times to flew it just because we like, we know there's good data here and it just was, it was like it was just mocking us. There's this great perfect cross line, north, south, and then big gaps, west. Got it though.
Any other?
So just pointing out, apparently you're gonna have to mail a couple calendars to the folks that.
I just saw that.
Apparently, yeah, I saw that.
saw that.
Yeah, so I mean.
I
don't
do
know if y'all
have
were-
calendars, so if
I figured you did.
we could tally those up, yes, I would be happy to.
We haven't had to contend with the online and in-person gift giving.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I didn't say
situation.
that's only for people who are
Yeah.
present.
Yeah.
I didn't say that. All right, thank you guys, appreciate it.
So we have a little bit more time. I didn't know, maybe just to see if anybody has any questions for any of the last 3 presentations. People online, if you want to raise your hands and chime in, you don't have to go through chat. You can speak up either way, but. Go ahead, Steve.
I have a general question for all the folks. How far inland from the like barrier beaches are we getting topography LiDAR in these surveys?
I'll say for us, it depends on the region because, you know, these boundaries were defined taking into account prior NOAA projects. So some of ours don't go inland at all because they're immediately adjacent to a NOAA project. But otherwise, they go in, I think, 500 meters.
So it's like the Army's.
Anyone else have comment? Go ahead, Jim.
The areas that overlap between the different contractors. Person done and who does that?
FDEP's doing most of that work, in the comparison in the UC.
Anyone else? Anybody online? Okay, well, we'll go ahead. We'll just have a little bit of an extended break. We'll be back at 2:35.
And sorry, there's not that many snacks left. They weren't supposed to put that out until 2, but they put it out at 12. And so people ate before. So you had your snack when you came.
Okay. Fun. That's all I can say.
If you're desperate, I'm sure we can find a vending machine.
That's right.
I wouldn't grab them before.
From the truck.
That is awesome. I mean, so yesterday, those things are hard.
You should store.
Have you gone?
Do.
People grow.
Yes, we can. Okay, we're coming back from the break. If you're online, so if you can come back to your laptop.
And we'll start next with our sonar data collection. And if you didn't hear enough, you guys already,
So I'm covering for
Okay.
Karen and Rick, yes.
what's this? Yeah, so the agenda, that's
It
all.
over to. our-
Yeah.
If you hadn't heard enough from Wilford, you're going to some more, but it's not going to be as the agenda says. Raising Karen, it is RJ.
Yes. You don't want to hear us.
I'm done for today. Like,
Everybody, I'm RJ Kozik. I'm a hydrographic surveyor with Wolford. I will be following my colleagues Rick and Karen's talk. I'll be covering the sonar portion. Not as exciting as planes and LiDAR, but I grew up boating my entire life. I love seeing what's under the sea. Do you think that in the future sonar should go first? Because definitely not as exciting as the But there are some cool mounds and features out there. Up with the sonar award, awarded 3 regions, the Big Bend, Panhandle, and Northeast. You can see the Panhandle and Big Bend area in the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, I'm not sure what they anymore. They're in the Gulf. Over on the east coast of Florida, we have the Northeast region as well. We did partner with NV5 on this. I'll touch on that later. The total project area is 17,600 square kilometers. And then that is Wolford's survey vessel, the Thunder. Our partnership, our good friends at NV5, we've got a lot of history with them. We've done projects with them for a long time. Before NV5, they were geodynamics in their maritime division. Track and now we're working together. And these are some of our boats and planes. Cover everything from shallow water to deep water. We've got a pretty large inventory of different sensors and sonars. Everything is a Planix Pause, Trimble, and then NV5, they use Kongsberg, so 2040 and 2040 Cs, and we are R2 Sonic 2024 and 2026. Okay. The cooler parts about this project, we used some autonomous vessels, unmanned, uncrewed, whatever you want to call it. There's nobody on board. The ability of Starlink, we're able to log into this boat remotely from anywhere in the world and survey. We used Chance Maritime, so they let us rent their MC-29. They supplied a captain, we supply a surveyor. We both have separate Starlinks. We don't see each other's screens, so there's a lot of communication going on there. They've got cameras that lets them see everything around them and tracking systems as well. This is a 32-foot vessel and it can go out offshore for over 30 days at a time. Pretty impressive for nobody on board. It's got 2 seakeepers, so a big challenge that we have offshore is it's too rough. And as a surveyor, staring at a screen in 6-foot swells can be pretty brutal. And taxing on the crew, on me, and this totally takes it out of the equation. These 2 seakeepers are gyros that actually stabilize the boat in heavy seas and let it collect better data in rougher waters. We actually passed the acquisition torch around the world. Over folks all over the place. We could start surveying on the East Coast and then to Alaska and then to Australia, Ireland, and then back around. Because this boat's collecting 24/7 all the time. That's actually an acquisition screen. That's what we're seeing when we log in. It lets us see all of our accuracies, like our vertical, how good our vertical is. We can see our data coming in and our coverage as well. Automated a lot of our data processing. Say what you will about Elon Musk, but he gets us our data pretty damn quickly. We are pulling our data right as we finish collecting it. So right when we finish collecting that line, we start pulling it and we can start this process. We worked with the folks at QPS. They're They have Chimera, and that's the post-processing that we use. They developed a Chimera command program, which lets us automate the raw data into Chimera. We append it to a dynamic grid, and then we can run filters and see how clean or dirty the data is. Export a geotiff, export survey metrics for reporting, identify flyers, any coverage gaps, holidays, things like that. And then we upload it to our real-time GIS tracker. In the past, this was a kind of monotonous button pushing task that it's a much easier doing this. It just processes in the background and you just see the data uploaded to our real-time tracker. Saves us a lot of time and money. It's very efficient. And big thank you to the folks at QPS. They've worked really hard with us hand in hand in developing this process. So this is our tracker. It's a web-based GIS tool. This is my 24 or all the time. I wake up in the morning. This is the first thing I pull up on my phone. It lets me track the boats, see what they're doing, where they're collecting, how fast they're going. Are they recording? Are they doing calibrations? Anything like that. You can see on the right, there's 2 boats out there when we took the screenshot collecting in Northeast regions. And then that was NC29 in the Panhandle region collecting. So this is how we view our data as well. When that exported geotiff is pumped out of Chimera, it's automatically uploaded here, and we can see how the data looks. We also give this to our client. So our clients have access to this. The folks at FDP do, and they can check on the boats, see the coverage, see how things are looking. Here's some of the survey areas. Apalachicola Bay area. This was 0 to 20 meters water depths in the Big Bend region. So this was a lot of our smaller boats like the Endeavor and the Thunder. We used dual head R2 Sonic 2024s on the Thunder to collect most of this. And here's Crystal River area. This was collected by NV5. Some really cool bathymetry. And there was a couple sections here where there were so many crab pots that we could not collect. Probably our biggest challenge is crab pots all over the place. They just get in the way, they snag on our gear, and we would rather not have to be in the crabber's way and disrupt their business. And then here's the Panhandle region. So this was MC29 collecting live. This is what you'd see when I check on things. You can see they're online surveying in that sheet 05, and this is 100 to 200 meters water depth. And here's the Northeast region. You can see some really cool deep water canyons, some sand waves, and then some underwater mounts in a line. These are the coolest images I could find. Not as pretty as LiDAR, but I think it's pretty cool. Then we have the summary. So initial acquisition for Region 3, Bathy is complete. We're continuing some reflights through March. We have to meet FTEP's new September 30th, 2025 deadline. Sonar collection awarded for those 3 regions I mentioned earlier. We have completed work in Big Bend, except for the crab pot area, which we're just waiting for clearance to get back in there. Those crab pots to be removed. Northeastern Panhandle will be collected this year. That's ongoing. And all sonar data will be delivered by spring 2025. Don't have any questions? Someone had mentioned earlier, hurricane collection. We were collecting before, during, and after hurricanes. And then this image actually, I took on board that. We did a post-hurricane survey for Hurricane Milton to open up the Tampa Bay channel for them.
So when you say you did some before and after, was that in the same place?
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was on board surveying and we had to go in because of the hurricanes. Came back out and started collecting.
Let me know when those data are available.
Yeah. I think all of it's been reviewed by FD
Yeah.
for those regions. Yep.
Anybody online, Amber?
I have a question. So do y'all go and fill in the areas where the LiDAR doesn't get good data sets?
Not necessarily. We collect anywhere that we are that FDP asked us to. So if there is an area where then they can award it to us and then we will.
I think some of those areas are though, that
Yeah.
where there were
Some of the
voids
additionals.
just couldn't be filled by, or some of the shallower ones. The deep ones, LiDAR doesn't reach.
Yeah, our directive was to get as many voids in prior to the awards of the sonar. Obviously, we're still finding void.
Do y'all go in and fill in those voids with using the sonar and the two data sets together?
We wouldn't deliver them together. They're delivered separately.
Yeah, well, Wolpert had like the Keys is the original area, but Wolpert, the Maritime, the vessel base, they're going wherever there are voids. So it's not just at the Keys, there's all of it. So FDEP and their contractor probably will be merging all the data sets together. Good luck.
Sorry, I'm fixated on the hurricane. So in the area where you did pre and post, what was sort of the range of water depths that?
That was 0 to 20 meters.
Okay, that's awesome.
If you're interested in seeing that data, I can remote.
Can you hook me up?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd love to.
I'm curious, I think both of your presentations mentioned this partnership with NV5 and what is that partnership like providing, or what are they providing to you?
For the sonar portion, I'm not sure about the LiDAR portion. They're doing a lot of the collection and we're doing the processing.
Anyone else?
Yeah, of course. The autonomous vehicle, does that have a dedicated tender or do you just contract someone in the nearby port?
So we don't handle any of the actual captaining of it, but they bring it out to a certain point of channel and then their tender leaves and it's quickly on its own.
Goes back to port?
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's about a mile offshore to the actual like port in where they work with the Coast Guard pretty closely. And I think that is what the Coast Guard wants and they kind of get me how that works.
Sonar equipment that you use with Jeff serves it, their company or brand or something that you work with most often or?
So at Wolpert, we're all R2 Sonic. R2 Sonics here, and then Kongsberg is what MP5 uses. Yeah. And 2024, 2026, and then for R2 Sonic, then 2040 and 2040C for Kongsberg. Thank you, everybody.
Next we'll go to sail drone, Brian.
Yeah. All right, now for something that's way cooler. Airplanes. Sonar's way cooler, aren't it? You gotta. We're gonna see a lot cooler stuff than they do. So.
The bar down.
We appreciate that.
I got it from Sail Drone. This is gonna be short because we just got started. So don't have much stuff. We'll show you what we're doing and a couple of things. But before I get started, who's going to US Hydro next week in Wilmington? All right, so a few of you, more of you should go. But just for those of you who are coming, we're still on track. We're over 400 people attending this conference now, even with the feds backing up. So we're looking forward to seeing everybody there. And if you're not a member of the Hydrographic Society of America, come see me afterwards and I'll tell you why you should be. Okay. Here's what we'll talk about. So this is our task assignment, much smaller than everyone else's. 2,800 kind of square kilometers there up on what's called the middle ground. So it kind of crossed the boundary of the Big Bend and the west, whatever that was. And that's the orange box down there is kind of where we're going to start and do our initial 10% to provide that. This is what we're using. This is the Sail Drone Voyager uncrewed surface vehicle. You can see it looks a little different. If you haven't seen the Sail Drone before, come see me at the reception tonight and I'll walk you down and I'll show you what one looks like. Wind propelled primarily and solar powered as much as we can. It does have a diesel generator with electric thruster, so we can maintain speed. Like other folks, we're using Starlink. We have as a sonar, we're using the Norbit I-80S with the integrated Positive V Ocean Master. Great system. We mapped with this the last 2 years up in the Gulf of Maine, and excited to finally be getting out in the water here in St. Pete. We have a small office here, and so we're looking forward to working. So last Friday and Saturday, we launched from the hub where we'll be tonight. So you can kind of see what they look like. Again, the Voyager's 33 feet long. You may have seen our smaller drones, the Explorer, which are 23 feet long. They're the ones that drive into hurricanes. These we do not want to drive into hurricanes. A lot more here on board, but they are underway now. Again, this is our area. We got a nice break in the UTM zones through the middle of, so that's fun. All the things that we're going to do, which is what everyone else is doing here, as far as checking the quality in real time as much as we can. Same thing, offloading data almost immediately, running our quality checks, producing a coverage diagram that goes back out. And I'll show you the system that we use with both internally and for our customers. So again, these are our deliverables and our timelines. We have 10% by the end of April, with the 100% coming up later in the year. So again, we have a pretty small area, so not expecting any issues there. So this is a screenshot of our mission portal. This was live yesterday or whenever I sent Christy my slides late. That's what I was waiting on, was for them to get out there.
Had an excuse.
You can kind of see down at the bottom, we've got the 2 drones down in the bottom area that they're doing their patch tests and building reference areas for us to use. On the right-hand side, see the pictures from the drones, and then we can look at a whole host of data and time series coming off. Once we start collecting data, we'll be able to see, the hydrographers will be able to see the swath width behind it, and then every day we'll update coverage that we've done the previous day, and that'll be visible as well, so you can kind of keep track of what everything is doing there. Things we're trying to do, or we are going to do a little bit on the side with our friends at USF. They have created some backscatter calibration areas. Our Norbits were calibrated for backscatter at the factory, so we're going to go hopefully add to that calibration area. They've run Kongsberg's out there. Is there anything else, Steve? They ran maybe R2 Sonic. Anyway, they're trying to establish backscatter calibration sites that we can all use. And so we're going to go hopefully add some data there. Another thing we're going to try is a shallow water glider providing us with sound velocity profiler. So the Voyager has a winch with an AML3 on the back. It inductively charges when it's back in the cradle and it connects on Wi-Fi. That's how we get our sound velocity. But again, we have to stop and drop, and that takes some time. So we're concurrently hoping to have the USF glider out there in our area where we can see could gliders in fact provide this type of information to slow moving USVs like ours. We're not as fast as a ship or a boat, so a glider doesn't have as much trouble keeping up with us. And that is really all we have. Any questions for me?
For anything online, Amber?
Yeah.
Brian, oh, go ahead.
How long can the sail drones be out there?
So depending on how much power we're using, it really runs an engine service, but we're starting to get upwards of 3 months with the Voyager. The Explorer can stay out for a year. We also have a big one, a 65-footer that has Kongsberg sonars on it, EM304 Mark II and a 2040. And those we're getting up towards 45 days with those and hoping to get 60 to 90 out of those as well.
At first glance, it looks like there's a pelican sitting on. Doesn't it? I actually had a question. So the area that you were chosen is very specific. And I know it's near and around areas that we have at least in our data inventory been collected before. Do you have any idea on the kind of objectives behind choosing that specific area?
Not really.
Okay.
We saw that too. But I think hopefully it'll be useful for some of the projects that USF was looking for ancient shorelines and those kind of things.
Did you influence that?
We had no influence.
Okay.
What kind of sea state can these handle?
So, quite a bit. You can see very low in the water. It's got a wave piercing bow. It's a very stable platform. And so, we're handling and collecting good data, in the Gulf of Maine, getting, significant wave heights bigger than 8 to 10 feet. So you're kind of pushing through it. But again, it's the nice thing about Starlink, right? You can monitor it, go, hey, data quality sucks. And then we just kind of go what we call a storm hold, which we just kind of ride it out. And then we can get back on survey as soon as conditions abate. So again, we're not, one of the advantages of a USV is like you were talking about, you're not sitting there, or you're moving out of the area to try and clear, get people ashore, whatever. We just kind of wait in the area and then pick back up.
How flexible is the platform? Can you deploy other kinds of pieces of technology on it, or is it pretty fixed?
I will say we have, for the Voyager specifically, it has 2 primary missions. Entry being one, we have integrated a sub-bottom profiler for an NMR medium USB. We have integrated an AUCP, and we're doing a project with MEL to validate detox sensors on these as well. So it does have some of the sensors that's on our Explorer, which was totally a NOAA project of all the things you would have on a buoy. Now it's mobile kind of out there. The radar on the top is a pan tilt zoom, or sorry, not the camera on the top is a pan tilt zoom. And then we also have a radar that's for the maritime security mission. Right now we have 20 of these deployed for the US Navy, 10 in the Caribbean, 10 in the Eastern Pacific, looking for drug runners and those types of things, because we can't stay at sea for so long. Putting more eyes on the ocean. We have developed some passive acoustics under a offshore wind grant where we did detect a variety of whales, including northern right whales, that sort of thing. So we can put other sensors on, but it needs to be not a unicorn. It's got to be financially viable for us to do that because the integration of it takes a long time and a good bit of money.
So are you predominantly wind driven or electric?
Right. So it makes for an interesting, at the end of the day, survey line plan because we optimize for the wind that we're going to see. So we may have a couple of days where we're running lines east-west because the wind's coming out of the north. Beam reach is our best, so having it 90 degrees out. Or you may see every 4 hours, there's a wind shift coming and we change our survey lines. So our hydrographers are really busy looking ahead at what the wind conditions are going to be and planning new lines that we can jump onto. And so we're getting 100% coverage. It's just not in your traditional sense, following the.
It may be in different directions, but you always. Okay.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, if you looked at all the lines in a block, it would be some this way and some that way.
Is there a wind speed that you down?
Yeah. I mean, once we start seeing winds, I'll say it's dependent on the wave and the winds. But once we start seeing significant heel or just bad quality data, so getting above 25 knots starts getting a little fun.
In the vehicle hold station?
In a sense, I mean, we actually our Explorer, which is only wind propelled, it only uses the sail, actually replaced a buoy in a marine sanctuary for NOAA in Half Moon Bay, California. And so it basically loiters within basically a swing circle, if you will. So it stays within a spot. Now, if there's a big storm that comes along for that one, it can get blown up pretty easy. These have the electric thruster, so we could stay in one spot. And the ones that are doing like the maritime security, they just patrol in a box. We can kind of drift within the box and then relocate, and it saves a lot of fuel that way.
Previous slide mentioned the vessels were restricted with the Coast Guard 1 mile offshore, that type of deal. Do you have something like that where you sail out of the harbor on your own?
Escort them out of the traffic separation, which I think is probably the same thing that Stuart might do a chance. So we took these out, out through the harbor and then set them free. And that's how we deploy these around the world. So one of these will fit, it breaks down, fits in a 40-foot container. And then we fly a team to meet it, put it together, put it in the water, test it, escort it out. And then that team flies off to the next place in the world where they either need to launch or recover one of these. So we don't have any shore-based footprint at all. Much like you showed with Chance, our hydrographers are all remote. We have some in the UK, we have some in Australia, we have some in the US. as are our pilots. Now, the difference I think that we saw is our pilots and our hydrographers are all in the same systems and talking, they're all Sailor and Apollo. We do use contract work standards, watch standards, but they get access to that same.
Oilable and recoverable by a vessel offshore if need be, or is it?
It